And she is also not a thinker, and that is the courage, who applies to other media, to other forms. It's not just abstraction, but it's also she's not ashamed of abstraction at all. There are many people around nowadays say, "Oh, abstraction." No. The sense of abstraction is a very important sense for human beings. She has been a performance artist once, too. She did stuff, not just talked about it. And she deals with the infrastructure of our technological world on the highest possible level. Avital Ronell.
Thank you very much. I'm greatly honored and humbled by that wonderful introduction, by the way we're working in the class, by the general atmosphere here. So I decided to try to make something pertinent happen in terms of what you're working on, some of you, with Nancy and others. And I'm pulling this together from a book that will be coming out eventually, that's done and is on its way, but with an elephant's sense of pregnancy. So I don't know when it's going to be hatched exactly, but I'm kind of done with it. It's called Stupidity. And maybe I'll give you a slight sense of the contextual milieu from which I'll be speaking. As some of you who've worked with me know, I've always tried to fasten on to that which has been evicted from philosophical premises or deemed unintelligible, unworthy, minoritized. And that's why I've also worked on things such as crack, the telephone, Eckermann, who's Goethe's abjected secretary. So now I feel I've done a lot of field work on stupidity, and I thought I'd put it on the scandal of stupidity. I thought I'd write a book on it. Part of the book now, so I pulled things together. It may not seem to flow in some rigorously logical way, but I've pulled some stuff together that will give us an opportunity maybe to talk and discuss for the days to come, maybe. One of the things that interests me is that which disrupts understanding. That's not the same as stupidity. There are modalities of stupidity that I work on. The first chapter is called Slow Learner, and the last section, which is actually a satellite, is called The Figure of the Ridiculous Philosopher, or Why I Am So Popular. And I'll just remind you that for Marx, there were three main world powers that powered and propelled history. One was economy, as you know, the other violence, and the third was stupidity. So he calls these each a Großmacht in the making of history. Another issue that interests me very much, but I won't get to today, was the myth of the wild child, which was invented by the empirical philosophers. So one large section of my work is on the invention of idiocy by philosophers, by psychologists, and others. So to honor your bodies, I've introduced some cuts into this text, sacrificing connectors and backup demonstrations. So if you need those fillers, we'll do that some other time. So point 00, essentially linked to the inexhaustible, stupidity is also that which fatigues knowledge and wears down history. From Schiller's exasperated concession that even the gods cannot combat stupidity, to Hannah Arendt's frustrated effort in a letter to Jaspers to determine the exact status and level of Adolf Eichmann's Dummheit, to current psychoanalytical descriptions of the dumb interiors of the despotic mind, heir to the idiot king of which Lacan had written, and it's a major issue in Freud when you discover your father is an idiot. Stupidity has evinced a mute resistance to political urgency, an instance of an unaccountable ethical hiatus. In fact, stupidity, purveyor of self-assured assertiveness, mutes just about everything that would seek to disturb its impervious hierarchies. Neither a pathology nor as such an index of moral default, stupidity is nonetheless linked to the most dangerous failures of human endeavor. I'm not going to say here what stupidity is, because eluding descriptive analysis, it switches and regroups, turns around, and even fascinates, as it fascinated Flaubert's Saint-Antoine. Flaubert, of course, spent a lot of his work and time on the question of stupidity. Stupidity, which cannot be examined apart from the subject accredited by the Enlightenment, poses a challenge to my sovereignty and autonomy. Where politics intersects with ethics, the question emerges of where to draw the line, if there is one, of responsibility. To be what it is, responsibility must always be excessive, beyond bounds, unaccomplished. You are never responsible enough. And it is unclear whether, like Heidegger, whom I discuss at length, but not tonight, it suffices to say, I made a stupid mistake in order to adjudicate a lapse in responsible thinking. This is something I write quite a bit about. This was Heidegger's response to his involvement in National Socialism. It was die größte Dummheit meines Lebens. So I try to read that. To explore the extreme limit of such responsibility, I have appealed to the debilitated subject, the stupid, idiotic, puerile, slow-burn destruction of ethical being, which to my mind can never be grounded in certitude or education or lucidity or prescriptive obeisance. These issues are perhaps most compellingly addressed by the troubled writer Fyodor Dostoevsky, whose acute sense of answering for the other is frequently invoked by Levinas. And I quote the philosopher Levinas, "We are all responsible for everyone else, but I am more responsible than others." Dostoevsky teaches us about the assumption of ethical liability by placing responsibility close to the extinction of consciousness, where it becomes necessary to ask, what can be assumed by the limited subject? The domain of the human all too human, menacing enlightenment with dim-wittedness, punctually threatens hopes of an original ethicity, which in the case of the idiot, Dostoevsky also posits. Like malice, cruelty, or banality with which it is often allied or confused, stupidity has largely escaped the screening systems of philosophical inquiry. Deleuze points to this in Difference and Repetition, where he argues for the necessity of confronting the troubling facticity of stupidity. So philosophers have evicted, to a large degree, of the question of stupidity from their thought or work. But the poets, by contrast, have ventured, as if prompted by some transcendental obligation, to a consecrated domain where language meets its unmaking in stupidity, idiocy, imbecility, and other cognates of non-knowing. The extreme passivity, the near stupor, characteristic of the poetic disposition,